Yeah, the title of our last panel is the sound and representation of social space. And we will start with Elena's presentation, which is about the title is Recorded Sound and the Development of Ideological Control, Changes in Japanese Cinema since 1931. So let me briefly introduce Elena. So she graduated from the University of Seville in Spain with a bachelor's degree in East Asian Studies, a lingual specialization in both Japanese and Chinese languages. After that, she completed a master's degree in East Asian Studies at the University of Granada. Right now, she is affiliated to Tohoku University with a research scholarship of the Japanese government, Mexico, and where she is pursuing a second master's in innovative Japanese studies. So you are in the master's degree now. So the second person in master. Welcome. So about her field of study, it is Japanese cinema during the pre-war, wartime, and the beginning of the post-war, with a focus on the jidaigeki, genre, and mostly from the point of view of ideology. So it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for having me here where I'm still a master student with so many interesting presentations. So as it has been said, I'm sorry, I'm not an specialist in sound or music like most of the people here. I focus mostly on cinema. Can you see my presentation, sorry? Okay. Normally I do case studies, mostly from a narrative standpoint, but this conference inspired me to take a more dedicated look at the power of the audio element in film and the sonic aspect in the development of ideological control in Japanese cinema since 1931. So as kind of limitation to this study, this is not about how effective censorship was in Japan during this time or how important these changes in Japanese cinema were, but with more focus on how was the effect on sound during this time and how it made the cinema industry evolve in relation with ideology, censorship, and propaganda. So as a brief start, I would like to give an historical overview. And we can see that since 1931, we have at the same time the first all-talkie film, that was The Neighbor's Wife and Mine, and only 1 month after, we have the Mukden incident, the invasion of Manchuria in Japan. And from that moment on, at the same time, we see an increase in the number of talkie films since they completely monopolized Japanese industry since the 1935, and an increase in the number of proposals to bring in cinema into line with the ever-present but never actually defined national policy or kokusaku, and in the actual regulations that were being taking place. And all of this coalesced in 1939 with the film law that was one of the most strict and most important censorship code that Japan has had in all its history. So I propose that there is a certain relation between both of these developments. There is not a simple coincidence, something that has already been also proposed by the Japanese scholar Fuji Jinshi in 1999. But Fuji Jinshi focused more on how the introduction of recorded sound transformed cinema from a simple visual art form into a narrative art form, and how it could be more easily used in propaganda. But in fact, we have a lot of films during the silent era where ideology were still a really important element. So the one example is What Made Her Do It, a film of 1930, still completely silent, that was heavily influenced by Marxist ideology and which had an important social message. Not only that, the film Orochi of 1925, it was only an entertainment film, but the protagonist was a really rebellious and anti-establishment character, and as such, we can say that ideology and propaganda existed far before the introduction of recorded sound. So how did exactly this recorded sound influence cinema? So the most eventful situation that happened as a result was the disappearance of the Banshee. That, for those who might not know about it, were like narrators that were in the theaters during the screening of silent movies to explain what was happening in the screen and give a framework for the film, an explanation. And this provoked an important effect in censorship, because since the beginning of cinema, since its conception, before it was even called as such, and it was only known as misemono, an exhibition, there was a censorship code that make films or moving pictures, as they were called at the time, to be in line with some basic public decency. And from 1917, they were already like a centralized code of guidelines of how to conduct censorship on films, even if there was still being carried out by police officers in regional districts. However, this censorship was carried out mainly to the title, the plot summary, and the intertitles of the film. However, the Banshee performance was a live one, and most of the time it was improvised. So, of course, this was not in possession of the censor from the very beginning. So, this might seem something that is not so relevant, but in fact, this explanation of the Banshee was so important for the understanding of the film that it could completely change the meaning. Sometimes it was in line with the interests of the government. For example, during the screening of films about the French Revolution, they were considered to be anti-emperor and as such not able to be shown to Japanese public. But the image of the film, the visual, were still shown with normality during the theaters and the screening of the film. And what was changed was the Banshee explanation that said that there was a case of robber barons in the Western countries that were being like persecuted by police officers. So all the anti-monarchic element was completely stripped out of the film due to the sonic framing that it has. And in this case that I explained, it was according to the desire of the censor, but in general, most of them, such as Tachibana, a former police officer of the censorship official, consider Banshee an enemy for the ends of censorship, because normally they could simply introduce social commentary, for example, of the films, in cases that the censors considered it has no relation with what's being said, because it was just a contrast, of different parts of the cities. And as such, they consider that they should also be controlled. However, controlling this Banshee were far more complicated, because being a live performance, it requires that police officers were present in the theater constantly in order to control what was being said. Also, a license system was being introduced to control that the personalities of the Banshee through a written exam and see if their political thoughts were aligned with those of the government. So, of course, this was a complicated, more costly method of doing censorship. But with the introduction of recorded sound, all of this changed, because Banshee became completely unnecessary. So the power of the narrative, the audible narrative to frame the film, was directly recorded into the dialogues, and as such was in possession of the censor from the very beginning. So this introduction of recorded sound changed the power from individual people who had some power to reframe the narrative and to express their own opinion, to allow for a centralized control of the government about what could be said or not, or should be manipulated. Of course, there were strikes of the Banshee in 1932, mostly because they were losing their jobs and their way of living, of course, but they failed, which is also a way to show how the introduction of sound completely changed like the dynamics of power and moved the power toward the control, the central control. So another important change that this recorded sound create was an increase in the realism of the film. And this has like different effects. That's what I'm going to talk next. So on one side, we have that it made the jidaigeki genre to lose some of the strength it has. The jidaigeki is a word for the historical films of Japan, and mostly at the time of the silent era, they were both based on the tachimawari, chambara or sword fight, a really choreographic, a really visual fighting scenes that were really appealing to the public, such as the image that we have here. However, as it has been like suggested by a lot of researchers, the introduction of recorded sound changed the focus from the visual aspect of the film towards the sonic aspect, toward the dialogues. And this changed the interest of the population more toward the gendaigeki genre or the modern time drama. Because it was easier for it to adapt to this new kind of sonic narrative. I'm sorry. And why is this important? This is important because the historical genre has always been a way to evade censorship. Because using a technique of Japanese arts that's called mitate, they could frame social problems of the present that were forbidden to be spoken about in a past setting. And in such a way, they have plausible deniability to not being criticizing the present government when in fact it was understood that it was a critic of present day times. 2 days ago, I think it was in a release presentation, also we can see like a film of Enoken that was also a parody. So it was another example of this kind of critical aspect that jidaigeki have. But although jidaigeki was still really powerful during the 30s, it started a decline, especially during the first time of the 30s, that were when the talkies were being introduced. Not only that, also foreign films start to be more difficult to be accessible by the population because visual language was more like an universal kind of narrative that everyone could follow. And even in the cases that perhaps foreign tradition were strange to the Japanese spectators, the Japanese public, the Banshee could explain and normally explain this kind of elements for the audience to follow the rhythm of the film. However, since the introduction of recorded sound, the heavy part of the narration starts to be in the dialogues. And being these dialogues in other language, they have to be translated, which costs money, and also to be subtitled during the film. And this created a lot of technical problems. So of course, it supposed a barrier in the availability, of foreign film. This is not to say that foreign films were better in itself than Japanese one, but at the very least they could offer simply a different view on certain topics than the centralistic one. So my point here is that the recorded sound eliminated some of the alternative or genre that could criticize the system. And what happened on the other hand? A genre that became really popular during the early 30s was the newsreel about the war. And of course, a big part of their popularity were due that a lot of people have loved one in the war, and of course they were interested into knowing what was happening. However, it is true that the fact they were realistic, they have true images, they have also true sound. That was something that was normally advertised a lot in this kind of newsreel that became completely talkies since 1934. Were far more apt to the representation of heroic feats of patriotism due to the soldiers' actions that could stir more nationalistic feelings in the population. So, of course, we can see that certain tendencies in the tastes of the population also motivated a change in cinema and put it more in line with centralized government. Not to say that was a conspiracy or anything like that, it was a natural development, but was a development in favor with the ideology that was the ultramilitaristic and ultranationalistic ideology of the government. And also another important point is the cases of the bunkaega or documentaries. And like a first brief note, it is important to consider that nowadays, in Jacques Ellul in 1965, we have a really clear understanding that propaganda and education are not opposing concepts, but that in a lot of cases can be completely intertwined. However, during this time, during the 30s, due to the way propaganda had been used during the First World War, propaganda was being associated with non-logical or emotional affective ways of appeal to the public. In Japan, specifically, it was associated with deceits, with lying or manipulation of the facts. So the government and the military specifically was not comfortable with the use of propaganda that in Japanese was called senden, which is also the term for advertisement. So it was seen as something dishonorable and not good to use for a great nation such as Yamato. However, on the other side, documentaries were instructive films for the enlightenment of the population, and as such could not be considered propaganda. And of course, the development of the documentaries were greatly aligned with the introduction of the recorded sound, because it allowed for a more specific, more detailed explanation that in a lot of cases were narrated by figures of authority, not an entertainment figure such as Benshi, but sometimes like, for example, general of the army such as General Araki in Crisistain, Japan of 1934. And another important point is that a lot of these documentaries were in truth really objective, really scientific, so to speak, such as, for example, films about the life cycle of insects or other biological organisms, or the sun eclipses, for example. But between them, they were also like films about the historical reason for the war or the decadence of the Western culture. And as such, these more nowadays considered propagandistic documentaries were surrounded by another number of films that were considered to be truth and reasonable, which completely fostered the appeal or the truthfulness appearance that they have. In truth, bunkaega were not popular for the population. It's not popularity, we're about what we are talking about right now. but they were forced in theaters before the screening of more entertainment films. And this introduction of recorded sound gives them a credibility that in other circumstances, when they were only silent stories based on emotion, probably will not have had. So as a conclusion, what I would like to mostly enforce is the idea that in contrast with live sound during the time of the Banshee, recorded sound during wartime were always playing as an advantage for the government, and that facilitated the application either of censorship or the creation of propaganda in line with their values of militaristic and ultranationalistic ideology. It allowed to centralize control of the narrative without having to give control to individual personalities. It motivated a change in public interest that were playing into the hands of the government and fostered an appearance of objective truthfulness that made the propaganda more believable. Also, I think it could have been interesting to study more economical aspect of the subject because, of course, the recorded sound technology were expensive and a lot of independent study started to disappear in this time. So I suppose that can also be a correlation, especially given that these independent studies, sometimes they were more associated with Marxist-Leninist ideologies, but this is an avenue for other investigation and for the future, because I have no information about that. And also as a tentative conclusion, so to speak, because more data will have been necessary to do it, I find it interesting that while the sound was lived, like in the case of Banshee, the sound could be considered free, you can always take control over the speaker, such as the policemen that were in the theater, but at the end of the day, you can never control what is being said by them. However, in the moment that the sound became recorded, it became death, if I can make the wordplay. There is a direct control over the voice of what has been said, and it can be either completely suppressed or can be repeated as many times as it is necessary to enforce certain discourses. So it's always going to play more easily into the hands of the established power. So thank you very much for your attention.